Heyo everyone, welcome back to Theonopolis. So today we will be building the actual Atlantis scene, but I will be mostly talking about the Atlantis story, because I really like the Atlantis story, even though I don't think it's completely true. But I will start off with talking about what I'm building, just so you guys are a bit up to speed to, well, what I'm building, why I'm building things like this. And to start off, you might realize, oh, I'm not building any temples or, palaces, which you mostly see when you see like the pictures of Atlantis. You mostly see like very big and wonderful buildings. And first off, they are big, so of course there had to be some adjustments. And that's one of the reasons why I wasn't building. Well, I'm sort of building like palace-like structures, but I'm not building like real big palaces and temples, because I just think that's like, you can hate me for saying this, but I think that's just overused. Like the sunken temples, like, yes, they look amazing. Like, I can't disagree with that. I mean, we have a halfway submerged temple in Theonopolis itself, like right next to the pharaohs, but I just didn't think it would fit in with, this is like, imagine the prequel of a story, this is what that is, and I just felt like, yeah, it didn't really fit in here. I didn't really want to go for the obvious, because I do think a temple is a bit obvious, like it's the really standard Greek building when you think of ancient Greece. And also, I didn't want to completely go the ancient Greece style with this. As I said before, I want to include a little bit more of like a Minoan architecture style, because that's a little bit more related to the actual story of Atlantis. So that's basically why there are no Greek temples, no palaces as of now. The scene that we're building is actually a bit more of like a downtown marketplace. Just because I wanted a little bit more of, a new scene or new story point, instead of just the place going down and you see beautiful temples falling to the ground or being submerged in the waves. I just wanted that little bit more of a human touch, so that's why I went with the more marketplace feel. You might also see the kind of inspiration point in, again, Fata Morgana, because I really love that dark ride. That's the dark ride I always go to when I go to the Efteling. But it's also a little bit different than most buildings I built in Theonopolis, because of course they have the Minoan reference point, also a little bit of a fantasy reference point, just because, as I said before, I don't think the story of Atlantis is completely 100% true, but we're going into that later. But the major differences between, well, Atlantis or the Atlantis scene and the rest of Theonopolis is more vibrant colors. This is mostly because this is a nighttime scene, so you need a little bit stronger coloring to actually show coloring. Like, that's a little bit of like, yeah, it's necessary. It also makes it look a little bit different, because most of Theonopolis' buildings have a little bit more of I wouldn't say faded, but a little bit more toned down when it comes to, the pops of color. While this Atlantis scene really isn't shy, which works in with the story. Also, there are the gold aspects that I brought over from the library of Theonopolis. So if you want a little bit more information on, that, I suggest you watch that video. If you want a little bit more information on the building style as a whole, I suggest you watch the first video of the Atlantis, well, part, or the Atlantis coaster part. So that's part 1. But back to the story of Atlantis, because I already said, like, there's a lot of gold, there's a lot more stronger coloring, there's actually a lot more of a richer feel to Atlantis, because colors were a little bit more expensive then, and yeah, it just fits in with the story. So yeah, this is really me trying to make a segue into talking about the story. I think I'm failing at that, but I mean, it's like 37, 39 degrees Celsius out here. I was already planning or already prepared for being a little bit more rambly and incoherent. So if you think I'm incoherent, I blame the weather. Because I'm literally sweating. If you don't hear from me from now on, I am melted into a puddle. But anyway, for the story of Atlantis, because I've already told you twice, I don't really believe it's completely true. And I say completely, and I'm going to go on to that later, but it's just, we know, like, I don't know if Plato was actually the first one to tell like the Atlantis story, but he's, you know, the one who's mostly credited for the story. But then looking it up, he had a penchant for inventing civilizations for his cautionary tales, because Atlantis is a cautionary tale. And we just, well, Hollywood just later picked up on it and it became just this whole big thing. I also don't really know, well, I can understand why Hollywood made Atlantis like a very advanced civilization, because the cautionary tale actually supports that. Or at least supports the idea that Atlantis was like supreme, because most tales or most versions of the Atlantis story make it so that Atlantis is like a place that became really greedy, really prideful, arrogant, gluttonous, like just name a human sin and they had it basically. Well, mostly greed and pride though. And that's, you know, when it comes to ancient Grecian mythology, don't be prideful or greedy, because the gods are bastards and they will strike you down. Always. But anyway, back to the story, because most stories, well, most versions of the story differ a little bit, but it comes back to the Atlanteans were too greedy and too prideful for their own good. Again, if you want to die by the gods in ancient mythological Greece, be prideful, be greedy, because they will kill you. But so in the most basic version, or the most agreed upon or not agreed upon, again, the heat is like messing with my brain right now. I'm not really getting to the right words today. But the most general aspects of the story do center around Atlantis being greedy, almost taking over the world, but that's like a minor plot point. And then they were struck down by, most of the times, Poseidon or just all the gods. But most of the times it's Poseidon, because I think there was one version of the story where the Atlanteans were like demigod children of Poseidon, which, you know, through the generations the demigod part kind of got washed out, and so they became vulnerable to greed and pride and such, which I think is a load of bullshit, because if there's anyone who is like greedy and prideful, it's the gods themselves. So if you are like a demigod, I actually think you have a bigger penchant to be greedy and prideful. But yeah, the Atlantis story is really just a story of like, don't be greedy, don't be prideful. And some say that Plato really just made it so that Athens would be a little bit more like Sparta, in that it's like, you know, humble, or not humble, but a little bit more sober when it comes to, you know, basically the entire civilization, or the entire city, because Athens wasn't, you know, humble and sober, or they were a little bit more of like the fun person at a party, instead of Sparta, who was basically the one who kept everyone sober, basically the chaperone of the party. But anyway, back to the story, because this is a big tangent. As I said before, I don't think the Atlantis story is true, or at least it might have referenced some parts that were actually true, though it heavily altered them to fit Plato's narrative. But most people say like, oh, the place of Atlantis is like in the Atlantic Ocean, which again, I think is, forgive me for the word, but I've already said it before in the video, but I think that's a load of bullshit because, like, we don't know a lot about the ocean. Like, that's, like, we know, I think we actually know a little bit more about space than our actual oceans, which, I mean, knowing what lies in the deeps, like the kinds of fish that there are, I kinda like space a little bit better. I'm not afraid of oceans, I'm just like, those things down there are terrifying. But if, like, Atlantis did exist, we would have already found it if it was in the Atlantic. Unless it's like in Mariana's Trench, which I'm probably mispronouncing the name, but it's like the deepest part of the ocean on the planet, I think. But yeah, as I said before, Atlantis, as you know, the story tells, probably wasn't a real place, but it might have referenced of a real place, which is Santorini, or in classical Greece it was called Terra. I think nowadays it's called either Santorini or Tira. Again, I'm probably butchering those names, but I'm going to say or call it Terra from now on because Tira sounds weird to me, and Santorini makes me think of some kind of pasta dish. I don't know why. Might be because there might be like a pasta dish that's similar in naming, but from now on I'm going to call the island Tira, which is located somewhat above Crete, which Crete was like the bastion of the Minoan civilization. And basically on Tira there was a volcano which erupted, sending most of the island into the sea. And this is also just a plot point of like the Minoan civilization. Why that? Because not everyone completely agrees on like what killed the Minoan civilization, which again was on Crete, but some people do say, or some researchers say, like, yeah, it might have been the eruption at Tira, because shortly after the Minoan civilization collapsed. So again, this is why I referenced the Minoan civilization in this build, because it's possibly the reference point for the Atlantis story. Like, it might not be completely true. I mean, again, it's Atlantis is like the heavily fictionalized version of Atlantis, or Atlantis might be the heavily fictional. Again, the heat today is just messing with my brain. But yeah, I'm getting off topic again, but back to what I was talking about. So the eruption at Terra, basically, well, I don't know for sure, like I might have gotten my sources wrong. Like, again guys, if I'm ever wrong on something, please do tell me down below in the comments. Like, I won't like burn you or anything. I'm actually quite happy if you guys tell me like, oh yeah, that's wrong, because I mean, it's good to learn and I'm happy to learn. Anyway, I don't know for sure if this is what happened, but the eruption at Terra, which was I think one of the greatest in like ancient history, did send most of the island of Terra down to the ocean floor, where you can see the reference point to Atlantis. But it also destroyed, or could have destroyed, the Minoan civilization, because an eruption on that scale could have triggered a large tsunami, which, I mean, Crete is just like right downstream. Like, yeah, if there was like a tsunami being created by this eruption, yeah, Crete would have been dealt a severe blow. So it might have, you know, been, in my opinion, because I'm saying like in my opinion because I'm in no way an ancient, or, well, ancient scholar, that's the wrong word, but like a researcher or historian on this part. Like, I have like enough knowledge to foot into their thumb. I don't really see it as like the all end in conclusion, like the eruption caused a tsunami which destroyed the Minoan civilization. I think it's like maybe one of the causes, like one of many. Because if you think about it, humanity is very survivable, very flexible when it comes to natural disasters. I mean, look at, let's say, Pompeii and Herculaneum. Herculaneum is the, you know, the lesser known but slightly more interesting little sister to Pompeii, which I would actually much rather visit Herculaneum than Pompeii, because things that I will visit upon in the next video, because in the next video I will talk a little bit more about like volcanoes, because why not? Also the miniature that we're building in this scene, because I think this is going to be the last scene which will include a miniature. Maybe the last scene will also include one. But for Pompeii, of course, swallowed by the volcanic eruption of Vesuvius, Herculaneum had, if I'm correctly, the not complete same, but the same fate as being swallowed. But look at nowadays, like Naples is like right next door. Like we're still in that area, even though we know like Vesuvius is like a highly active or highly dangerous place. But I mean, the ground there is very fertile, so of course people flock to there because there are higher crop yields, there are better quality crop yields. So people return, even though they didn't know about Pompeii, because I think a few decades after Pompeii was swallowed, it was already lost to history. But I mean, it's a volcano. It's dangerous. One of the reasons why I will never go to never ever live in Naples, because I think some historians or some people or researchers agree that Vesuvius is due for another eruption, and yeah, if that ever happens, Naples might not be there anymore. But anyway, that's enough of like rambling. As I, want to say, like, humanity is very flexible, very survivable, so even in the face of like the eruption at Terra, it might have like been a cause of the downfall of the civilization of, well, the Minoan civilization. But I think it would be like one of many, because people are so, well, survivable, they would just, or flexible, they would just start to rebuild. I mean, Pompeii was already hit by an earthquake before the Vesuvius ever came knocking, and they were again rebuilding. Again, maybe one of the causes, but I don't think it's like the central cause. But I do see why Plato like could have easily used Terra as a reference point, because the, well, half or a large part of that island was just swallowed. I think now what once was one island is now 3, and that's like the caldera, like the edge of the volcano, are those islands that now remain. The rest is just gone. Anyway, so that's really all I wanted to talk about in this video. So to give you a quick wrap up of everything I talked about, because I might already, well, I imagine today's video is a little bit more incoherent, so I think it's, well, feasible or plausible to give you a little bit more of like a wrap up, so that you might understand me a little bit better today. So yeah, the building style of Atlantis is Minoan, ancient Grecian, and a little bit of fantasy all thrown into one pot, with a lot of gold and wealthy aspects thrown into it. The Atlantis story is probably not true in my mind, or might have referenced the Terra story heavily and then has been morphed to fit in with Plato's narrative to, well, basically be a cautionary tale of not be greedy and not be prideful, otherwise you go down, because the gods hate you. The gods hate everyone, actually. But anyway, that's going to be it for today. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you do, I hope to see you back in the next one. Don't forget to subscribe if you want to keep up to date with my videos. and I wish you all an amazing day, and I hope you all survive the oncoming heat, because we are not done yet. And yeah, again, hope you all have a wonderful day, and see ya